Welcome to Cleveland Conversations. My name is Jim Kahler, and I will be your host today. It's my pleasure to have with us Barren, who is the President of Business Operations with the Cleveland Guardians. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started, but I know you have had a busy off season with the reimagining of Progressive Field, so let's jump in and get started. But walk us through the vision of this major renovation that's going to take place over 2 years.
So the vision for reimagining Progressive Field started sometime around 2017. Progressive Field, believe it or not, is now the 8th oldest ballpark in Major League Baseball.
Hard to believe.
We had done some renovations, the corner bar back in 2015, a kids clubhouse, and that really triggered the thinking for we need to get out in front of modernizing the ballpark and renovating as we look to extend the lease, which is exactly what we did.
Great. So can you walk our viewers through the two phases? Because this is really going to take place over 2 years. Opening day is right around the corner, and that's phase one. But there are two phases to the project.
Yes, there are two phases. This year, opening day 2024, we will primarily be focused on the upper deck. So there will be a new pennant district in right field, which will be a group space, and it's really the first dedicated group space that we have at the ballpark. And then down the left field line, what is currently the Terrace Club will be offline this year. The upper deck of the left field line will actually have an open air space that would sit on top of what was formerly the Terrace Club and have a beer garden for fans, and anyone who buys a ticket to Progressive Field will have access to that space.
Let's stay there for a second on the Terrace Club. A lot of our viewers will remember the Terrace Club when Progressive Field first opened, Jacobs Field. And it was, state of the art, a closed in restaurant, but now we see a real movement going to open air.
That's a really good point. And when Progressive Field was built back in and opened in 1994, that type of a space, climate controlled, behind glass, higher end food and beverage experience, that was state of the art back in the early 1990s. As we progressed over the course of the last 25 or 30 years, that concept from a fan standpoint has less and less relevance. Fans actually like to be able to hear the sounds of the game, the crack of the bat. They like to hear the crowd. You actually only hear Tom Hamilton, which is a great thing if you're in the Terrace Club today, but you don't hear the roar of the crowd, the smell of hot dogs and of freshly cut grass. So those types of things play into taking the glass off and creating an open air experience for fans in that space.
Okay, now a lot of our viewers wouldn't know the behind the scenes. That's what today is all about. Can you walk us through the timelines and the considerations you had to make? Because phase one, play a season, phase two, now you're ready for final completion.
Sure. So the construction process itself follows very much any major construction project in terms of phases. So we actually began concept development while we were negotiating our lease with the city, the county, and Gateway. As we worked our way through schematic design and then design documents and ultimately construction phase, that takes time. So while we renewed our lease and it was effective January 1st of 2022, we actually didn't swing our first hammer in terms of deconstruction for the projects that will be part of opening day 2024 until the last out of the 2023 season.
Okay, now the Guardians are contributing, according to my research, over $67 million to the project and any overruns. But can you talk to our viewers a little bit about the considerations that go into that and what type of return on investment you're looking to get with the whole renovation?
It's a great question. The way we structured the lease as we renegotiated it was for ballpark improvements, the public participated with a 2/3 contribution, the club on a 1/3 contribution. And we bonded $202.5 million. 135 was bonded for the public and 67.5 for the club. The club actually has responsibility for any cost overruns on the ballpark improvements. The public has responsibility for all capital repairs in the ballpark, major and minor, and any overages on that front.
And that public-private partnership that was formed years ago is still working today.
It is. And that's standard for many of the Major League Baseball ballparks, particularly in smaller markets where the public participates in the building of the actual facility and then the maintenance of that facility over time in collaboration with the individual club and the ownership group that's part of that.
Okay, let's take a quick time out and we'll be right back. Brian, in your role, can you elaborate a little bit more about your interaction with the city and the county and everybody from the public sector?
Sure. The city and the county are key partners in any type of a public-private partnership for an arena or a ballpark. So we worked with both at the time, Mayor Jackson and the executive branch on the city side, as well as County Executive Armin Budish as we were negotiating our lease. We did a lot of the work with the executive branches and folks that they had appointed to handle the negotiations, along with Ken Silliman, the former board chair for the Gateway Economic Development Corporation, and arrived at a term sheet. And that term sheet in the summer of 2021 became the catalyst for actually working through the legislative process from both a county and a city legislative branch perspective. So we did multiple readings, you work your way through subcommittees, and eventually had the approvals from both the city and the county right before the holidays in 2021 for a new lease that was effective January 1st of 2022.
So good to hear you say Armin, because he's one of the hosts of Cleveland Connections like me. Well, all right, so opening day is right around the corner. As you look at the completion of phase one, what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about both of the upper deck projects for opening day 2024 for different reasons. So in right field, we have the upper deck pennant district groups space. It will be the first dedicated group space that we have at Progressive Field. Believe it or not, no really good coverage overhead for those dicey days in April, sometimes May, from a snow and occasional rain perspective. So we will actually have a covered space in right field in the upper deck, and it will enable us to sell groups really in 3 different sizes. And we can program the space with 3 smaller groups of, call it 100 to 500, 2 groups, if one happened to be between maybe 500 and 1,000 fans and the other one less than 500, or 1 major group, call it 1,000 to 1,500 plus. That space in right field would be dedicated to companies, to any community organizations that may be interested in bringing a group of folks to a ball game at Progressive Field. Food and beverage options there will be closer to the actual point at which they'll be consumed. We added a building on East 9th Street this past year, primarily to help with food preparation, and it will replace the commissary, which is currently down adjacent to one of our clubhouses. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes.
Right.
On the left field line, the upper deck terrace garden will open this year as well. The upper deck terrace garden will be open to anyone who buys a ticket to Progressive Field. It'll be a great standing room only space with a beer garden, which always works well in Cleveland, and beautiful views of downtown Cleveland. So from left field, you'll be able to look at downtown and over to the river. And in right field, you'll actually be able to look toward Cleveland State. Beautiful, majestic views in all directions of downtown from the upper deck. These 2 improvements heading into opening day of 2024 are really the 2 times that we've touched the upper deck since the ballpark was built back in 1994. There were some modifications to the ballpark back in 2015 where we put in what fans dubbed the shipping containers in right field.
Yes.
Those will be gone, permanently retired, and that new group space will replace a lot of that space out in right field.
Okay, so my students are learning the importance of filling the upper deck, and several times you've referenced group space, but that's going to give you an advantage that you didn't have in the past, especially for those early season games where school isn't out yet, and now you can get more bodies in the building, more groups, and give the club a home field advantage.
That's exactly right. And those different size groups, really it takes the burden of what do we do in the event of inclement weather off the table. And it enables different organizations to plan a group outing without the worry that if weather actually doesn't work in our favor, we're not going to be able to host that event for our organization. That really becomes important from whether it's a business or a community organization, having the outing and the experience that takes place at the ballpark is just as important as whether or not the team plays well that day. So ensuring that the employees or the folks within a different group will have Cleveland State out there on opening day, and you'll get a chance to have an experience up there in that space, knowing that if we do get a little bit of drizzle, you will play Major League Baseball under just about anything except for lightning or a really driving rain, and we'll play right through that, and you won't have to worry about what do we do if the folks within our group happen to get wet, because they'll have overhead coverage.
So a lot going on in the facility. Our viewers wouldn't be aware of some of the challenges that you're thrown with. Like if I come to see you at your old office, I've got to find a new location right now. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced as the president of business operations?
That's a great question, Jim. So as you alluded to, our front office is actually being renovated as we speak. So we have temporarily relocated our front office personnel from 2401 Ontario Street and our administrative building that houses both our business operations, day-to-day full-time employees, about 200 or so, and our Cleveland-based baseball operations team for Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff. We've had to relocate over to the Oswald building downtown, just around the corner from the cathedral. We'll be there until opening day of 2025, so it does create some challenges as we work our way through the 2024 season, particularly for our baseball operations folks on game day, where they're used to just hopping in an elevator and getting down into the clubhouse to do the types of things they need to plan for a game, and they'll have to actually walk a couple of blocks to get over to the ballpark.
Yeah. Now you are a true Clevelander living downtown. I'm not going to give your address away, but you're getting some extra steps in this off season.
We're getting some extra steps in this off season, and it really is convenient. It's about a 10-minute walk from our building where we're currently, we call it our bridge location in the Oswald building. And for our business operations, game day activities typically start 5 or 6 hours before the game. Staffing comes in to start preparing food and beverage to get ready if there happens to be a giveaway item or something of that nature, particularly on the weekends where we have block parties pregame with $2 domestic cans of beer and $1 hot dogs, fireworks after the game, and oftentimes a promotional giveaway. A lot of the planning for when gates open starts in the early afternoon, and we'll have to be agile over the course of the next year. Walk over and find nooks and crannies in the ballpark to prepare for the ingress of fans once the gates actually open.
Right now, you talked about a new building, East 9th. So your fans that understand your footprint, if they really take a close look on opening day, there's a new building and you're going to put a kitchen and some of your concession operations into that facility, correct?
That's correct. So as you drive along to East 9th today, we actually were in the process of putting the bricks on the external facade over this past weekend. It looks as if that building has been there all the time, when in fact that space was actually what we referred to as our blowout gate space. It was for excess capacity, particularly when we would do an activation like a block party on a Friday or a Saturday night pre-game. That space itself did not have any sight line to the baseball field. So we've now put a building in there that the top of that building actually is even with the upper deck and is part of that new group space that we talked about a few minutes ago. Underneath there will be a new food preparation point, the primary commissary for general concessions in the ballpark is actually located in the lower concourse adjacent to the home clubhouse. As we renovate our clubhouses heading into the 2025 season, we need to actually annex that space as part of the improvement to our clubhouse footprint. As a result, we've proactively moved that primary food preparation point to that new building that you referenced on East 9th Street.
Yeah, and if you look at when the building opened in 1994, where concessions were with Major League Baseball back then to where they've evolved to today, that space has got to be extremely valuable.
It's extremely valuable. You're exactly right. And really that experience for fans, general concessions and, having a hot dog and a beer or a soda is part of the Americana of going to a baseball game. That said, as we renovated the ballpark with some minor renovations back in heading into the 2015 season and heading into the 2016 season, we brought a lot of local food and beverage concepts into the ballpark, and we found that resonates extremely well with fans across all different fan segments here in Cleveland, and it's a concept that we've seen other Major League Baseball ballparks bring into any of their renovations or new ballparks as they build them.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to want to know what your favorite ballpark food is.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Welcome back to Cleveland Conversations, and now we're going to have some fun and talk about ballpark food and concessions and how things have evolved over the years. So, Brian, let's start with, you're down at the park for just about every game. What are some of your favorite foods to take in when you're at the ballpark?
So I would say at the top of the list is Dante's Pizza. I'm a Dante's pepperoni pizza person. So it's one of our local concepts, and Dante has oversight over how that is actually prepared. It's prepared fresh and takes a matter of minutes from the time you place your order until you actually get it. But I would have to say, whether it's cold outside and that hot pizza or on a nice summer night, that tends to be my go-to.
Yeah. Now, local concepts have gone on to become a big part of the experience for your fans. Can you share with us some of the other local concepts that our fans can look forward to that have been there, or maybe some new ones that are coming in?
Sure. So Barrio is one that's a local concept. Ohio City Burrito is another local concept. These are a couple of examples of places that you may find downtown or in select locations around the city. Melt was another one that historically has done very well for us. These are all examples of food that Clevelanders are very proud of. So as they bring friends or guests, or if they're business entertaining at the ballpark and want to give their counterparts coming to the game an experience that is a Cleveland food experience, they really like to patronize those local places. Those, in addition to local craft beer, which obviously Cleveland is a beer drinking market, but is a craft beer drinking market in particular. So once again, fans like to give their guests an opportunity, as well as themselves, to enjoy the local food and beverage throughout all of our ball games.
So as Major League Baseball continues to connect with a younger generation, food and experience and atmosphere is really what this renovation is all about.
That's correct. So as we learned in our renovations about a decade ago with the corner bar in particular, having opportunities for a younger demographic to gather and not necessarily be confined to a seat was a really big piece of insight upon which we built the corner bar. Our learning in Cleveland and other ballparks as they have mimicked that idea, and in fairness, we went to Coors Field and saw the rooftop terraces there and were able to get the concept from them, which led to the corner bar back in 2014 heading into the 2015 season. That's really become an important aspect of getting younger people to come into the ballpark, gather with their friends and their family to take in a ball game. Oftentimes, if you walk out into the corner bar during a ball game, you'll see backs to the field. People are actually standing around tables, talking to one another. The drink rails that are down in that right field corner obviously face the field, tend to have an electric audience. Several of our right fielders over the course of the last decade have commented how much they actually enjoy playing in right field and hearing our local fans cheer them on.
Huh. And kudos to you. You introduced a new membership plan last year. It was a standing room plan where I can buy a monthly membership at a very affordable rate and get access to some of the areas that you're talking about.
That's correct. The Ballpark Pass was a product that our brand team introduced last year, and Jason Wiedemann, along with Alex King, introduced a $49 Ballpark Pass, which was renewable at the end of every month and enabled you to get access to any standing room only space within the ballpark. One of the reasons that we introduced it last year, prior to the renovations, was to get the demographic, which is generally a younger demographic, to come back to the ballpark and experience some of the different spaces, so that as we renovate the ballpark heading into opening day this year and we round out those renovations heading into the 2025 season, folks actually have become accustomed to new spaces, and if you haven't been there lately, you just haven't been to Progressive Field. So creating a lot of that excitement around those different experiences that come with that standing room only pass.
Yeah, and I think that adds to the character of the city. So we're only blocks away, but a number of my students jumped on that opportunity, and what a great affordable way to enjoy Major League Baseball.
Exactly, and something that if you're not going to every game, you don't worry that I'm not getting a good payout on that investment. If you go 2 or 3 times, all of a sudden the $49 becomes, $10 or $12 a game, which is a really great value for fans.
Yeah. So I got to go back to the kitchen, and you get this wonderful setup in this new building on East 9th. What are you going to do with the space where the old kitchen was? Because every square foot is valuable, and you want to get the most out of all the space that you have.
Yes, so heading into the 2025 season, we will have renovations to both of our clubhouses, the home clubhouse as well as the visiting clubhouse. And our home clubhouse actually sits on the third baseline in Cleveland. For most ballparks, the home team sits on the first baseline. In Cleveland, the way the ballpark was built, the first baseline is in the sun. It gets very warm, and in the summer when the sun is up the longest, it's extremely warm in the first base dugout. So down the third baseline, adjacent to the home clubhouse, is actually where the commissary that does the primary food preparation is today. That's what's moved to that East 9th building, and we'll be able to take that space and expand our home clubhouse. We'll also be building what we're calling the Carnegie Lounge. It will be a season ticket holder space down under the ballpark, if you will, behind home plate. Our dugout suites that today have a roof over the top of them and have seats that actually in some instances are closer to home plate than the pitcher is.
Right.
The roof will come off of those dugout suites, and we'll actually have a space down there where folks that patronize those will have an opportunity to enjoy that Carnegie Club as well, which will have the highest end food and beverage experiences throughout the ballpark.
Okay, let's go back to some of the amenities for the players. Most of our viewers wouldn't realize how many hours a Major League player spends in the stadium. So if I'm a player with the Guardians, what do I have to look forward to?
The players will have, certainly heading into the 2025 season, state-of-the-art clubhouses, which as new ballparks are built or as ballparks are renovated, that is an area that's of high focus for Major League Baseball. Every year at the end of the season, visiting teams do a quantitative survey. The traveling entourage with the team that manages the clubhouse on the road, as well as the players and coaches, fill out this survey. And they'll rate different aspects of the experience in the visitors' clubhouse. The league will actually share those results back with all 30 teams, and if you fall in the bottom 5, you're expected to make improvements to get out of the bottom 5.
You're going to get a call.
We spent a lot of time in the bottom 5 over the course of the last decade, so we look forward to getting out of that. And one of the things that is important for players, beyond the clubhouse and being able to have their locker and all of their gear there, are food preparation points where they actually can go sit in a smaller cafeteria-like space and have their pregame meal. We don't really have good spaces today, and that was not a requirement back in the early 1990s when Jacobs Field at the time was built. So that's something that we will improve as part of the renovations to the clubhouses for next season.
Okay. We can't end this show without talking about the eclipse, because it's going to happen on opening day. So other than moving the starting first pitch back to 5:10, what other challenges are you running into with the eclipse?
Well, the eclipse, it wouldn't be Cleveland if we didn't have another challenge to try and solve. So there are a couple of challenges. Our plan, as we announced last week, the first pitch is scheduled for 5:10 p.m. As we've worked back with NASA to determine when the actual minutes of the total eclipse will take place, the most dangerous times for eyesight will be on the front of the total eclipse and on the tail of that. As you can imagine, eyesight is very important to Major League Baseball players, so players have a requirement within the collective bargaining agreement to take the field 60 minutes before the first pitch of a ball game.
Okay.
The field has to be accessible and available for them to get out and stretch and run and throw and do things that are part of their routine. So as we backed up from the optimal window after which it will be safe and said the first pitch will be 5:10, our players home and away will be able to access the field at 4:10 to go through their pregame ritual. And obviously on opening day, you have a lot of pomp and circumstance on the field, which players and coaches understand, and that's part of opening day ceremonies throughout the league. But they will have access to the balance of the field to go through their pregame routines.
Good. Well, we can't thank you enough for being part of Cleveland Conversations today, and we want to wish you nothing but the best as you head into the 2024 season.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today, Jim.